Hello guys, my name is Engineer Alide. I want to discuss friction and this is a very nice topic. Though we know that friction is a force, so that means it's going to be treated under force. But I want to look friction as a topic. Now what is friction? Friction is a what? Is a force that opposes the relative motion of two bodies in contact. Two bodies in contact. Now that is to say, what we are saying now, let us have a drop diagram. This is a floor. Let's say this is mass. That means there is already a contact here now. Now that frictional force is a force that opposes the relative motion of two bodies in contact. That is to say, if motion is like this, then friction will go this way. So friction is always against motion. So what can we learn from that definition? First of all, we say what? You understand that friction is a force, which that means is measured in Newton. Number 2 point we are going to take from that definition is that is what? It opposes what? The what? The motion of what bodies. Now, that is number 2 point. Number 3 point I will pick from that definition is that if you check this diagram, you see that it acts opposite or parallel to the ground level or the surfaces in what? The surface where the body is placed. So that is to say that it places body of mass M is placed on this surface. This surface. Now that is to say one is moving over the other. That is the body mass M is moving what in relative to the surface that is placed in contact. That means there will be a normal reaction here that is holding or pressing the two bodies to be in contact, and there is a weight here, which is the weight of the body is what? Mg. Now these three things, don't forget, the frictional force is parallel to the what? To the surfaces or the surface where the body is placed. Number 2, frictional force opposes the motion of the bodies in contact and within contact. And lastly, frictional force is a force. Now, I will say it is a vector quantity. It is a what? A vector what? Quantity. Frictional force is a vector quantity. And last, I can call it what? It is a non-conservative force. Non-conservative force. Non-conservative forces are forces that causes what? Losses in a what? In a machine, that ensure that the work input is not equal to work output, that ensure that the total work done is not conserved in a system. So a good example of that is frictional force. Now let us talk about types of friction. Types of friction. Now what are the types of friction? First of all, we have what we call the limiting frictional force, limiting or static frictional force. Static what? Frictional force. We have what they call the dynamic what? Frictional force, or what we call the sliding frictional force. Then we have what they call the rolling frictional force. Now these three forces, these three frictional forces act differently. Now in saying that the limiting frictional force is that force that opposes to a relative motion of two bodies in contact. when the body is just about to move. So that means when one of the bodies what is trying to slide, just about to slide, just about to move over the other, that opposition, that frictional force is that opposition that we experience against the motion. Now this one is what, when there is sliding, when one body slide over the other, the frictional force is that, the dynamic friction is that force that opposes what, the motion of the bodies in contact. That means in this case there is sliding, there is movement. In this case it is static at rest, body is at rest in this kind of friction. Then in this case it involves a rolling object like the wheel of a car as it roll along the road. So what is that wheel of a car experiencing? What kind of friction does it exhibit with the surface or with the road? Is what we call the rolling friction. Most of the times they roll with their surface, their circumference to achieve this friction. And don't forget, let me give you this bump. No, limited friction is greater than dynamic friction, and dynamic friction is greater than what, rolling friction. So rolling friction has to be what, has to be between a body, it must be between a surface and a what, a circular or rolling object. Why this one must be between what, a body, a surface, and probably a sliding object. That means object that will move. That means if at this point now friction must have been, or this one must have been overcome for the body to move forward. And if the body, if this box move forward, it will slide. This box will slide over this surface, and when it slides against this surface or in relative to this surface, what we'll be experiencing is dynamic friction that opposes the motion forward that will be experienced backward. So that's what we call a dynamic friction. So a limited friction is that the body is at rest. So, and that will lead me to what we call, what we want to discuss, which call what, the laws of friction. Laws of friction. Laws of friction. Number one is that for me to talk about law of friction, number one, what are the laws that guide friction? What are the laws that guide friction? Now, don't forget that F is proportional to R. The law says that what? The frictional force applied to a body is directly proportional to the normal reaction. That means that what, the frictional force applied to a body is directly proportional to a normal reaction. It's directly proportional to the normal reaction. And what we are saying now is look at the board. Now, that is to say, increase in normal reaction will increase, or increase normal reaction will increase frictional force, Fr. And in that case, if you remove the proportionality, what we have is what, F equal to mu R. So that means where mu is what we call the nature of the surface. The nature of surface, what? Of two bodies. The nature of the surface or surfaces of two bodies. We can call it what we call the coefficient of friction. Coefficient of friction. To surprise you, it does not have a what? A unit. Let's see. Make mu the surface of the. Don't forget that mu is what? The proportional what? Constant. That when we remove the proportionality, we introduce what? A constant. And that constant is nature of surface is what? Of two bodies in contact. So that means that mu is equal to what? F over R. That is the formula for mu. And if you check, the unit of this one is for Newton. The unit of normal reaction is Newton. Newton cancel Newton. we are going to have what? No unit for what? So mu has what? Has no unit. That means coefficient of friction has no unit. It is what? Unitless. As such, it is dimensionless. Now, let us continue with other things there. Let's continue. Now, if you plot the graph F against R, it will be a straight line graph. The statement of that, and the slope will be equal to what? Coefficient of friction. So frictional force plotted against what? Normal reaction. Take note of that. The slope will be a straight line graph. Because why is this straight line graph passing through the origin? Because no intersection. You compare with y equal to mx, meaning that what? F equals to what? Mu r. You plot F on the vertical, plot X on the horizontal. The slope is your what? Is your coefficient of friction here. Now, let's continue. Now, I want to continue with what? Laws of friction. I want to give you now the laws of friction after explaining that law. From what I have given you now, number one, it acts in what? Frictional force. Frictional what? Force. Acts in a direction so as to oppose what? Motion. It acts in what? Frictional force acts in a direction so as to what? To oppose motion. Now, if they are doing that, let me show you something. Now look at the board. Let's say the applied force is P, and let's say frictional force is Fr. Now, when the body is at rest, the body mass M is at rest. Now, we notice that what? The frictional force is equal to the applied force P. So, anytime the body is at rest, now, the frictional force is equal to what? The applied force P. That means, that is P equals to what? Fr. So the Fr is equals to what? Applied force. Now, if the applied force P now pull. Now, another thing again you must know is that this body just what? At this point, we say it is just what? About to move. Or just what? Start. Just to start what? Motion. You can say it's just about to start a motion or to at the point of moving. Now, at this point now, your P is equal to Fr, and we can conclude that P equal to what? Mu r equal to what? Fr. Now, don't forget, in this case, the normal reaction up, which is R, is equal to weight also, similarly. So the normal reaction is equal to weight. Don't forget, the body is at rest. Upward equal to downward, forward equal to backward. So, and what will now be our normal reaction? That is, normal reaction will now be equal to mg. So, it is not always that normal reaction will be equal to mg. It is only because the body is at rest. And note, your g is a constant parameter which you know as 9.8 meter per second square, or what? 10 meter per second square, which is called acceleration due to gravity. So if you now put it under the formula for friction, which is equal to applied force, we now have a mu mg as for friction. Don't forget, we can also write friction as what? Or coefficient of friction as Fr over mg. So if you are giving mass and you are giving what? Frictional force or applied force, which is similarly to what? Somebody else can write it and say, since P is equal to Fr, can I say applied force when the body is just about to move? This body is what? Just about to move or at rest. So can we say it's now equal to applied force equal to mg equal to what? Coefficient of friction. You are correct by saying that. You are correct. So now, what is number 2 point about laws of friction? Is that what? When the body is at rest, the frictional force is equal to what? Applied force. We have concluded that one. The applied force. Number 3, when the frictional force is less than applied force, the body moves. When the what? The frictional force is equal to the applied force, or let me say less. Let me use the word less. I've talked about equal. Is less than the applied force. P, the body moves. The body what? Undergo motion. And when motion has what been undergo, don't forget that the friction will now act in a direction toward them. That means in this condition, what? Friction has now been overcome. That means the applied force is now higher than what? Than frictional force. Now note that during what? This process, the F is no longer equal to what? R. Is not proportional to R again. Now when the body is just at rest, that is when this F is proportional to R, because this frictional force is what we call the limiting friction. Don't forget I told you limiting frictional force or static friction is a friction that is exhibited when the body is at rest. But immediately, most people don't emphasize that, immediately the body start to move. This is not our formula that F, the applied force or the frictional force is equal to what? No. You cannot say that applied force equal to frictional force equal to mu r when the body is now start to move. Now the frictional force during limiting friction is higher, is bigger than when it slide, when it start moving. At this point, sliding has occurred. It can move, a rolling body can move, a box can move. If it involves a circular object, we call it what? A rolling friction. If it involves what? A box that have a 3-dimensional shape, we say the word a dynamic friction. Now, I will not dwell on this first, but I will explain when we enter the cases analysis fully. Then I will understand what I'm saying. I want to just talk about all the key points first, all the stories, all the important information that we need before we enter the base, the main thing. Now, the next thing we are going to talk about is that I've given you 1 point, I've given number 2 points, I've given you the third point. Number 4 is that what? Frictional force depends on the normal reaction. Frictional force depends on normal reaction and the nature of the surfaces in contact. The nature of the surfaces in contact. Why I have to say this now is that for a perfectly note or right bump, for a perfectly smooth surface, for a perfectly smooth surface, this is an exam question. Coefficient of friction is equal to what? 0. Please take note of that. Although to get a perfectly smooth surface is rarely to come by. Though for what about what? A perfectly rough surface. Then coefficient of friction is equal to what? 1. Don't forget, we can never have the coefficient of friction that is greater than 1. It is impossible or impossible to have what? Mu greater than 1. It's not possible. That you now have coefficient of friction that is 1.1 or 1.5, no, or 10, no, it's not. So that is to say, I can say coefficient of friction is what between what? 0 and 1. If I put less than equal to means that I'm trying to consider perfectly what? Rough surface and perfectly smooth surface. Please take note of that very important point you should note. Very important point. Now, we need to talk about something there, which is the last one. This is number 4. And then number 5, which is the last one. I give you 1, 2, 3, 4. The last one is that what? Frictional force is independent of the area. That means the area or let me say the area and the relative what? Velocity of what? Of the two bodies in contact. So that means what? Is what? Independent of the size, the area, and the relative velocity of two bodies in contact. So it only depends on two factors, and they are here. You don't need to cram them. F equal to mu r. Now it depends on the nature of the surfaces in contact, which you call the coefficient of friction. It's also what? Depending on the normal reaction. And this is what we call the limiting what? Frictional force. This formula can only be applicable when the body is just about to move. This formula, this entire formula can be applied. Now, don't forget that if it is rolling friction, for rolling friction now, as the body rolls, it does that with this what? With the circumference of the circle around what? With respect to the center. Now, and frictional force will move against it like this. Let's say the body is rolling and is at rest. Let's say the rolling body is at rest, like the way we do it. We can also say that what? Fr equal to mu r. Yes, F equal to mu r. The applied force here is also equal to P. That means the frictional force equal to P equal to mu r. But the P here is what we call, that enable the body to roll, what we call the centripetal force. Now that centripetal force is what we call mv square over r, mass times velocity square, divided by what? Radius of the shape from here to the circumference of the circle. And don't forget, we can also say mv square over r equal to what? Mu r. That means you replace what? This one with what? We equate this and this. So somebody else can say, okay, what about if I say frictional force equal to what? Mv square over r in this case. Yeah, it's correct. So all equal to what? P. Now, if you compare these two, that means mu, it can be what? Equal to what? Mv square. That means equating this and this over r divided by what? R. Big capital letter R. This one is normal reaction. This one is radius. This is in Newton. This one is in meter. At the end of the day, we are going to have what? Mv square over r times 1 over r. Don't forget, r equals to what? Mg. You know why? The weight of this particular circular body is mg. The normal reaction that will be acting up is r. So in that case, r equals to mg. So if you put it here, you would have mv square over r times what? 1 over mg. Now this one will cancel this one. What we want to have is mu equal to what? V square over rg. Don't forget this formula, very, very important under rolling friction. Now, we have also said that what? It is independent of what? Area and what? And relative what? Velocity of two bodies in contact. It only depends on what? On nature of the surfaces in contact, which is known as the coefficient of friction, which is your mu, and also depend on normal reaction, which is a force that is pressing or holding the two bodies in contact. Without contact, no normal reaction. A normal reaction cannot act when there is no contact. Contact can be between the two surfaces, can be between a surface and another surface. One might be moving, one will be moving against the other. For example, a box placed in a table, the box is moving over the table. The table is what is fixed, is not moving, but the body, the box itself is moving in relative, in accordance or in with respect to the table. Now, having done that, now let us look at the advantages of friction. There are several advantages of what are the usefulness, what are the things that friction is help us to do in our environment. For example, like what we say, the functioning was safety belt in a car is what it helps that functioning was safety belt in a car. When you want to drive your car, you tighten your belt, you tie your safety belt. Why? Because when the brake is smashed, there will be what? A friction backward or friction forward rather. Now, in that friction forward, you might hit an object in the car. So the belt helps what? To hold back. So it helps the what? The functioning of what? Of the safety car. What about the braking action of a vehicle? When you mash the brake, that friction enable that brake action to work. If there is no friction, it will just be. That's why we put what? We put oil. If you check, there is brake oil. Now, to enable what? Gripping, so that when you match the, there will be kind of grip that will be experienced. If you don't use a oil there, now you see that it will be light. When you match your brake, it will be light in a way that you cannot hold the tire effectively, and it's as though the car cannot stop. Also, it also helps us to what? It helps our feet to be able to hold the ground when walking during movement. It helps our feet to hold the ground during. That means when you put your feet on the ground like this, like what I am doing now, it will help you to what? To make your feet stand on the ground. It keeps that feet from slipping during what? Walking. So as you are making your movement, there is a proper movement. You are not feeling that shake when you are what? Moving. So also, we have several examples that we can give you that is that friction does. It enable what? Screw and nail to what? To tighten in a what? In a hole. Several of them. So in our next class now, I'll be talking about disadvantages and application of what? Of friction. How to apply it in calculation. I'll talk about advantages. I'll talk about disadvantages. Don't forget, disadvantages are it causes wear and tear. It reduces the efficiency of a machine. It causes heat in the machine, which can lead to melting of the moving parts. It can also causes tear in the machine, wear and tear. It can also what? Causes heat. It can causes heat in a machine that can cause wear, melting of moving part. I've talked about that before. These are disadvantages of a what? Of a machine. But how can you what? Lastly, let me go quickly talk about this. How can we reduce it? Number one, by oiling and greasing of the part. Your face is rough. How can you do that? You can powder your face. By the time you powder your face, you make it smooth. So that powdering is also a way of reducing friction. Also, how do you reduce friction? You can use what they call streamlining the car. Look at the surface of your car. You see that it's smooth. Why? Because they've streamlined the surface, the car, the plane, and so many of the rail, the train, and all that. We can also do what they call lubrication. We have explained lubrication and several things that we can talk about concerning how to reduce friction. Please take note of that. Take note of that. The surface. Why do we use roller, the ball and the roller joint to attach to a machine to enable movement? The check roller and ball bearing is what placed at the feet of the what? At the feet of the moving part of the machine. Why? To enable the machine. If you check your generator or check anything, they use a roller there in order to move it, because if you want to move it, it will not be easy, and that roller enable movement because friction is less there. So that is just that about disadvantage of friction. So note that I've finished this first part. And in our next video, we'll be talking about purely analysis of friction. Thank you. God bless you.